This is the Energy Makers Show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And here's your host, Paul Dickerson.
Hi, I'm Paul Dickerson, and welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. Today's topic, energy and Russia. Our guest, Andrew Pidgirsky, partner at Adams and Reese and chair of the U.S.-Russia Chamber of Commerce, discussing in detail energy opportunities in Russia in 2013. All that right after this.
At BKD, we understand the constantly shifting nature of the energy industry. As a national CPA and advisory firm, we serve energy clients from the beginning to the end of the cycle. Our experienced energy advisors serve approximately 300 energy companies in exploration, midstream, downstream, oilfield services, and power production. Plus, we're the largest North American member of the Praxity Global Alliance, which means we can help you wherever you operate. Contact a BKD advisor or visit us online to learn more.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. Our guest now, Andrew Pidgirsky, partner at Adams and Reese and also chairman of the U.S. and Russian Chamber of Commerce. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Paul.
Now, with Adams and Reese, tell us a little bit about your practice and also some of your background.
Adams and Reese is a full-service firm with about 360 lawyers. We have offices in Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, Texas, South Carolina, and Washington, D.C.
The Energy Corridor.
That's correct, sir. And started as an energy law firm and maritime law firm out of New Orleans, Louisiana, and then started spreading out all over the United States.
Well, and you have a fascinating background. Can you share with our audience some of your voyage from Russia here to the U.S.?
Well, I was born and raised in the former Soviet Union and received my first law degree there and practiced law dealing with the first foreign investments in the former Soviet Union. And they came here to the United States over 20 years ago and received 2 law degrees, Master of Laws and Juris Doctor here, and practiced law in New York, Chicago, Dallas, and now Houston for the last 20 years.
That's fantastic. Well, as an international team leader there at Adams and Reese, you clearly have a global view of the energy market. What are some of the trends that you're seeing of interest to your clients these days?
Well, I think the trend is actually not as much international as I see with the clients. I mean, some of them are really focusing on the domestic market because of the shale gas development, etc.
Yes.
And as you know, doing business international has a number of risks, including political risk, etc. And what we see from the global landscape right now, there's a lot of turmoil in the world. That adds additional uncertainty, add costs, etc. But however, our clients are very active international worldwide in different parts of the world. So we're very happy to assist them with their continuing international development.
Well, with your Chamber of Commerce hat on, how do you describe opportunities for U.S. companies in Russia?
I think the opportunities for U.S. companies in Russia are tremendous. We have over 400 just Houston-based companies doing business in Russia. And in the U.S., there are thousands of companies that are doing business over there. I think most recent developments in Russia, specifically execution of the very close collaboration agreements between Rosneft and ExxonMobil. I think ExxonMobil is signing a deal with Rosneft a month. Shell had a significant development with Gazprom as well. A number of Russian companies like Novatek, Gazprom, Neft, Lukoil, and others are looking forward to working with the significant U.S. partners. I think service companies had a lot of potential business there. During the CERA week, the president of Rosneft, Mr. Sechin, he announced that Russia will need over 100 offshore rigs for the development in the Arctic. And as you know, how much money for the service companies and also equipment manufacturers is going to bring and how much support they can provide, including the service companies. So.
And do you see many jobs being created here in the U.S., or is most of that happening within Russia?
I think it's both. Here in the U.S. and especially in Texas, and definitely Russia as well. There's a number of, I would say, contractors and also employees from the US are traveling to Russia and stay there weeks, months at a time. So I think it boosts our economy as well.
For companies concerned about political risk within Russia, how do you advise that they protect themselves against any political risk?
Well, I mean, I think U.S. companies are very savvy in doing business internationally, so they're looking for different stabilization clauses. They're looking for dispute resolutions not being gonna get hold in Russia. So it's negotiations. Both U.S. companies and I would say Russian companies are primarily usually represented by U.S. law firms.
Right.
So these are very savvy, I would say, partners. But I think the companies know how to protect themselves because most of them have been doing business in Russia for 10, 20, 30, some of them 50 years.
So are there any concerns, now that we're 10 years after the Yukos nationalization?
I don't think so. I mean, even during the Yukos nationalization, all those companies, including Exxon and Shell and BP, were doing business there, and they made a lot of money. Their profits were soaring. They're doing very well, and at this point, I think again the government is stable if you know how to work with the government, and these companies do know how to work with the government.
How do you advise companies that are looking at Russia and, say, the Ukraine or some of the former Soviet states?
Well, each market is different. Russia is different from Ukraine.
Of course.
Ukraine is different from Kazakhstan or Tajikistan, etc. And each one has its own profile, set of government, prior history. And I would say future. The developments, most recent development in Ukraine that is trying to kind of diversify itself in terms of oil and gas development. Specifically, I think they're entering into several agreements with Shell and Chevron on shale gas development. I think the latest statistic that I look at mentioned that Ukraine has the 13th largest shale gas deposits in the world.
Wow.
And we'll see how that's gonna continue. Of course, Russia has very strong conventional resources and hasn't tapped into unconventional development yet because simply at this point they may not even need to. But however, again, Exxon and Rosneft signed an agreement on shale oil development and in Siberia as well, and I think Gazprom is looking into those issues as well. Kazakhstan is part of the economic treaty with Russia.
Right.
Yeah, so they're part of the customs treaty, and I think the treatment for all these three countries is similar. So if you're doing business in Kazakhstan, you will do business in Russia about on the similar economic terms as well. So there is the future. The future, I think, is good because the government seems stable. And which creates a lot of certainty for the investors. They know what to expect. So the actual age of the cabinet of ministers, the average age is about 40 years old. So they're young, dynamic, speak English. It's a new generation of the political, leaders in Russia. So we hope it creates more opportunities for the Western companies to come in.
We'll be back with more with Andrew Pidgirsky right after this.
Welcome to this edition of The Power of People, where we explore how to bring out the best in your most valuable asset. I'm Robin Knowles, President and CEO at TDS, the Workforce Performance Experts. Today we're talking with Steve Skarke, Executive Vice President of Kaneka North America, about developing effective leaders in our organizations. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Steve, as a seasoned leader, I know you've championed the development of leaders in your organization. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Robin, there's a great quote by Jim Kouzes, author of The Leadership Challenge. He says that all leaders are born, but exemplary leaders are made. So what that means is we have to develop the leaders within our organization, provide the resources to do that. And it's a journey, and in our experience here, it's a 2 to 3 year journey that we have to invest in our first line supervisors to bring them to that level of leadership.
Wow, you sound very committed to the process. From your perspective, How do you do that?
So we found that there's three really key elements in creating this development process. So the first is have a well-tested model of leadership, one that will create a foundation and provide a common language of leadership for the organization so everyone will understand that common language. The second is to use assessment tools to measure your leadership capabilities where they are today. Understand the leadership behaviors of the leaders that you're trying to develop. And then finally, follow that up and support it with a coaching process to give them a sustainable process in developing their leadership behaviors.
Is there anything else?
So in creating this process as well, you should look for those champions in the organizations who are truly dedicated to helping others develop. Use those champions as internal facilitators to keep the fire alive, to keep the process working.
Wow, what you described must have really been championed.
Yes, leadership development is a never-ending process, and as we continue to develop the leaders in our organization, we find that we can have a positive influence on the key performance indicators that we're interested in, such as safety, quality, and productivity.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
This has been another edition of The Power of People. Join us again next time to learn more about how you can develop excellence in your workforce while getting the best possible ROI from your human capital.
Welcome to another episode of The Future of Water and Unconventionals, brought to you by IHS and CAP Resources.
Hello, I'm Laura Capper of CAP Resources.
And I'm Marcus Gay with IHS.
And our topic today is, are environmental concerns about water usage and fracking real?
I think they are. I think that there's a critical issue around the environmental concerns associated with hydraulic fracturing, particularly around the balancing act when you look at the industry's social license to operate and the well or basin level economic performance. And to me, in the research that we've been doing, I see this as a balancing act between these two things, with transportation of fluids being at the fulcrum. We're seeing a number of areas of innovation, whether that's business models or efficiencies around fluid transportation by trucks, or even the development of fluid transfer through pipes and above ground infrastructure. So I think that points to the fact that this is a key economic and environmental concern or consideration.
Well, clearly the value of water is very, very high, and from everything we're seeing is going higher. But the trucking thing actually goes far beyond just the water itself. Huge environmental issues around trucking. I've heard metrics of 700 to 1,000 truckloads being required for a single well, to frack a single well. And if you consider 700 to 1,000 trucks going through small towns, the dust they emit, the wear and tear on the roads, the emissions, obviously it's a much greater environmental concern.
Environmental considerations are critical to your planning in hydraulic fracturing. Check back for more on water management and market opportunities.
And for more information on water management and water market opportunities for unconventionals, go to ihs.com/waterunconventionals. This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
All right, continuing on with Andrew Pidgirsky, where do you see Russian companies investing in the U.S.?
Russian companies are interested in Gulf Coast and offshore. I think Rosneft already has it participates in several blocks, about 20-30 blocks with ExxonMobil. There are other Russian companies that are interested in participating as well. They're also looking at some onshore plays. They're also looking at some shale gas because they're interested in the technologies. So similar to what some of the Chinese companies are doing. I believe there are going to be more and more activity in the very near future. I think a lot of companies maybe liked and entertained the idea of the swap of the assets, similar to what this Rosneft ExxonMobil deal did. Okay. So where you can gonna get security in terms of political support, you know, and also legal support, where ExxonMobil participates in the Arctic and Rosneft is participating in the United States.
So it really does matter how you structure these transactions.
That's right. I mean, you've got to understand how to work with the Russian companies or with the Russian governments. And some of the companies are very successful because they have experience and they've been working for a long time there, and they have a good track record, and they know how to work with the government officials and Russian companies as well. And I think the trend right now is the Russian economy is 50% still energy and oil and gas intensive. So it's a lot of revenue to the budget comes from the exploration and development and production of oil and gas. So as economy in Houston, Texas, about 50%
Indeed.
Energy and oil. So we have a lot of similarities. I would say even the GDP of Russia is $1.8 trillion. GDP of Texas 1.3, 1.4. So even size-wise, we're almost there as well. So I see a lot of synergies between Texas and Russia in a lot of different areas.
What's coming up for the chamber? Any events, anything on the horizon?
Well, we had this year has been very, very active. I mean, even for the last month, we had a number of events. We had offshore technology conference,
sure.
And we had also during OTC we had a procurement seminar with Lukoil. And in fact, Lukoil has a strong presence in Houston, Gazprom and Rosneft already. And there are a number of pipe manufacturing companies here as well, have a strong presence here. So we had just recently, last week, I had a meeting in Chicago, a business forum with the inbound and outbound investment and trade with the United States. And on the inbound side, we had CEOs of 4 major Russian companies with aggregate investment in the U.S. economy over $20 billion.
Wow.
And outbound, a number of companies that are very successful in doing business in Russia, that enter in some joint ventures on the engineering and service side, etc. We started the leader speaker series, where we're bringing in the CEOs or higher level management from the Russian and US based companies, as well as owners of these companies, to share their experience on how to do business in Russia pragmatically, and specifically the people that work there for the last 15-20 years, so they can help US companies and interested audience to penetrate the market and be successful in the Russian market. We are working with several regional governments in Russia, so we're anticipating the government from one of the significant, probably one of the largest regions and wealthiest regions in Russia coming here next month. And we're start preparing for that. We haven't sent the notice out yet, so I'm going to withhold the name until later, but you're going to hear it very soon. And they are looking for various downstream opportunities. I think the list is very long, that the one they sent, the different areas that they're interested in. So it's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of activity, because Houston is and Texas is a very business-friendly state and city. And I would say businesses here know how to do business international. And frankly, a lot of companies have done business in Russia at one point, are doing or will be doing. So, the purpose of the chamber is to help those companies to be successful in Russia. Because we believe that if you plant a tree, the more it grows, the roots are getting deeper. And companies like Exxon or Kaneka or others want to work with the U.S. companies because of the U.S. training and U.S. quality. And the more of these companies are going to be there, it's going to start and continue to change the economy there as well. So I think it's going to benefit Russia. We also help Russian companies to come to the U.S. market, to train them, to help them with their development in the U.S. market, so they can be successful in this market as well, because the U.S. market is very unique. It's very different from Russia or anywhere in the world, so you really need to know how to be successful here, especially in such a competitive environment. So one of our members is TMK, which is, I would say, together with Tenaris, is one of the largest pipe manufacturing companies in the world, and very good partner of the chamber. We've been working with them, very well, and they're doing very well, and in the United States as well. So.
Well, it's an incredible time, and these companies are lucky to have you as their guide. I appreciate you coming by and sharing some of the information with us.
Thank you very much, Paul. I enjoy being here.
And that wraps this episode of The Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio nationwide and seen right here at TheEnergyMakers.com. I'm Paul Dickerson, and we'll see you next week.